For more, we are joined by Ridzwan Rahmat, a principal defense analyst at Janes. Ridzwan, when you look at the scale and the type of weaponry used in the latest drills and a report that Taiwan is not their only target, how does it compare to last year's exercises, and how concerned should Taiwan and its neighbors be?
Yes, I've been monitoring the exercises since it began last week on the back of President Tsai's visit to the US. And I got to say, based on the types of military assets that are being deployed in these 3-day exercises, they appear to be more muted when compared to the exercises in August 2022. We got to see that there are no ballistic missiles involved. I mean, of course, we have to look at what is going to be happening today, which is the last day of the drills. But so far, there have been no groundbreaking weapons being deployed. Ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, these are all absent from these 3-day drills when compared to the one that was conducted in August 2022. Yes, there are 70 aircraft that violated the so-called median line. But overall, I think the China realizes the kind of disruptions that it caused to international shipping, international air routes in August 2022. And on the back of China's reopening, I think China may have shifted its focus towards, normalizing trade, do not want to disrupt trade as much given its economy. So I think Taiwan, in response to this, Taiwan understands that it's not as severe as what took place in August. So I think that's why they are a bit more muted also in their response to these exercises.
Yeah, so for their part, Taiwan's defense ministry said it would not escalate conflicts nor cause disputes and would respond appropriately to China's drills. So what does appropriately mean?
Mm-hmm. So I think Taiwan itself, they realize that these drills are part of a big ongoing regime to test how well Taiwan is able to detect its military assets. So if you were to look at the kind of military assets that have been deployed since August 2022, they're getting smaller and more tactical. It used to be the bigger aircraft like the H-6 bombers, but as the months progressed along, it became the smaller UAVs, such as the reconnaissance UAVs, the kind of UAVs that you will use in targeting operations. So as Beijing deploys these assets, I think Taiwan understands that it will need to respond by showing that it was able to detect the smaller tactical UAVs and its defenses are up to par with what China is deploying to the region. So by making this kind of responses, Taiwan is showing that its military is on foot, it's monitoring things very closely, and is aware of what's happening in its airspace. I think that's a very good response to, thwart off future attacks like this.
And Ridzwan, there are those who worry that if push comes to shove, Beijing could increase the pain by blockading Taiwan, cutting it off by air, sea, and even in cyberspace. How likely do you think that scenario is, and are these concerns that you share?
No, I do not agree with you on this, Julie, because if you were to ask me, I think other than military drills, Beijing does not have a lot of options with how to respond. I mean, of course, you have seen that they have announced sanctions against Taipei's representative to the US. The Chinese have also announced sanctions on the Hudson Institute and the Ronald Reagan Library. But I think overall, China still relies a lot on free trade that passes through this region. And I think Beijing understands this very well. If it disrupts the kind of sea lines of communications that goes through Taiwan, it will also disrupt the kind of shipping that goes through its own ports. And at this juncture, China still relies a lot on US-made commodities like chips and even basic commodities like soybeans for its survival. It also imports a large amount of its petroleum and other commodities that will sustain the country. So I don't think that kind of scenario will happen. Beijing recognizes how much it depends on sea routes for its trade, and I think at this juncture, military exercises are the most obvious way in which they can signal their displeasure.
Yeah, historically speaking, these military drills do not appear to benefit the pro-Beijing Kuomintang party at the polls. How does sort of domestic Taiwanese politics factor into China's calculations, if it does at all?
Yeah, I think we have this long-running perception that whenever there is a military drill, the pro-unification Kuomintang party will tend to lose support, given how the population has responded to past exercises. But if you were to look at the latest presidential election, that kind of perception has not really materialized. While there were a lot of Taiwanese polls that said that they do not accept the kind of actions that CCP took with regards to Nancy Pelosi's visit, the kind of poll results did not translate into the kind of support people were expecting for the DPP. So I think while Taiwanese in general are very angered by the kind of actions that Beijing is taken in the Taiwanese Strait, I think a lot of other domestic factors, such as the economy, still factor in a lot in how Taiwanese vote. So perhaps that's a calculation that Beijing has taken with regards to its decision to carry out these military drills.
Ridzwan, in the event that Taiwan is attacked, how far do you think the U.S. will go in terms of defending the island state? They've been pretty ambiguous for now, but do you think that Washington is strategically prepared, that they're ready for such a crisis?
Yes, I think Washington has maintained this ambiguity as a deliberate move. We know about the 1992 consensus, and I think if you were to look at the last military exercises in August 2022, on the back of those exercises, we understand how the U.S. and the Philippines announced several new military sites in which they can host U.S. military forces. But what many people do not realize is how close these new military sites are to the Bashi Channel in Taiwan. So I think what we can gather from there is that on the back of those exercises, the U.S. was now posturing a little bit more for its military forces, logistically speaking, so that they can take action when an invasion does happen. Beijing realizes this. There's going to be a lot more presence of American troops. And I think China understands that if it were to carry on being a bit more aggressive with regards to how it's treating Taiwan, it is not impossible for an increase in the number of US troops to be deployed in this region, not only from the US, but also perhaps from the NATO countries, which have already signaled their intention, to increase military relations with countries in this region. So I think that's a scenario that Beijing is trying to avoid right now.
And going forward, though, we should perhaps expect more of these military drills?
Yeah, I think as I was discussing just now, Beijing realizes that when it comes to the range of options that it has to respond to Taiwanese actions like this, it is very limited. Okay, it's the kind of actions that is taken will be detrimental to itself. So I think going forward, we can expect a bit more military drills as the main vector of Beijing's displeasure, but it's going to be more muted in the coming months because when compared to August 2022, that was when President Xi was running for his historic third term in office. There's no such catalyst at the moment, so I don't think Beijing will have an excuse or a reason to up its military drills intensity. So I think while we can continue to look to expect a bit more military drills to be happening in the months to come, I think they will be very more muted when compared to August 2022.
All right, Ridzwan, thanks so much for your insight this morning. As always, Ridzwan Rahmat there, Principal Defense Analyst at Janes.